So
Yeah.
today's topic, we've been going with this idea that if there are immature ego defenses and they cause people to get into trouble, to cause harm to their lives and those that they love or who love them, and the mature ego defenses tend to lead toward just all kinds of positive benefits in life, more of a successful life. In fact,
Mhm.
the Stoic philosopher Epictetus, quoted by Freud often, had said, character is destiny. Meaning,
Yeah.
if you wanted to control the future of your life and have a happy ending to everything and success and happiness and love and riches and have a great life, the life you're meant to live, the way to do that is through working on character or maturity. So it's that important.
Mhm.
Today, we were going to look at the immature ego defense of repression, kind of the master unconscious social habit of kind of shoving things under the rug or you turn your eyes away from the train wreck
Mhm.
of your own life and maybe that of others too, or others who depend on you. And you
Right.
just pretend it doesn't exist by looking away. It's not quite the same as denial, but notice it's sort of in the
Mhm.
same vein. It's denying what's right in front of you or denying what's really
Mhm.
happening. You just put things, brush things under the rug. And I think the antidote to that, there are probably several, but a major one I think of courage as a human character virtue that
Yeah.
directly counters and fixes and corrects and makes better whatever damage gets done by our repressing of things that we really need to face.
Yes.
So that's my introduction.
Yeah, my thoughts on that would be really similar. So, when Freud speaks of repression, he calls it the primal defense. You hit on that in a way that it helps me to distinguish between denial and repression. Is denial is actually more primal because it denies external reality, but repression attempts to banish internal reality. So drives, wishes, that generate conflict among the id and the superego, right? So the id being, I want everything right now, or I want to harm someone, and the superego saying, well, that's wrong. You can't feel things that are wrong. So that conflict then drives the ego to repress, to say, okay, don't notice that at all. And where that gets really tricky is when people have to offload a lot of emotion that, like, maybe they had an abusive parent and they legitimately wanted to hit their parent back, and to
Ah,
stop them from striking, like when they were a child, like I wanted to fight my parent but I couldn't do that, right, because I'm a child. So that creates that internal repression of, okay, I can't feel that drive, I have to push it away and repress it. And so that's adaptive as a child, but as you develop, you bring that with you into adolescent and adult relationships. And so the denial of your shadow, the denial that you can have any dark impulses, creates a very superficial self, like where, anything's bad from the neck up, any and analyzing. And so you get people who are afraid of their own shadow, literally and figuratively, right? That old phrase. And you get a lot of neurotic. I mean, our word neurotic comes from Freud analyzing people who were very afraid of things and worried about hurting people. And what it came from was this idea of so repressing your dark drives for vengeance or for indulgence and being afraid of it that you bring a ton of anxiety around. And so articulating that and expressing that and feeling that is the task of good analysis. And I would actually say of good EMDR therapy, where you help the client to articulate the negative thought, like, I'm powerless, I'm weak, I'm whatever, I'm bad, I'm evil, that they're trying to repress, and you drive into it and you say, okay, you're actually going to try to feel that as much as you can and not push it away, and I'm going to be here moving here. And so you give the mind a distracting task.
wow.
The conscious mind gets a distracting task in the form of eye movement, and it kind of buys you time and throws that gatekeeper off where you can dive through that emotion that would normally be repressed. I was kind of thinking that over as we were thinking
Yeah.
of repression, like, so when we talked about Jaws, like the mayor figure refuses to believe that the refuses to deal with the emotion from the shark being, actually real and hurting people, right? So you've got this, and I think denial fits in. It's interesting. I mean, he's got there's collective denial, repression of danger, right, all in service of keeping the beach going. So I mean, you see a lot of
Yeah.
daily examples of this, of refusing to actually acknowledge what you're feeling and what's going on in favor of keeping the status quo going, keeping equilibrium.
So I given all that you've said, it's important for us to remember that this gradation of ego defenses from primitive to immature to
Right.
neurotic to fully mature
Yes,
is a gradient,
it
and
is.
that all of these ego defenses, which are like unconscious, well, I shouldn't call them unconscious, they're universal human social habits that
Mhm.
you will see in all humans ever born, some of them. Otherwise, we're not talking
Right,
about a human. They're going to
right.
display some collection of these, perhaps one or two rather mature ego defenses, but perhaps
Mhm.
an abundance of immature ego defenses. It's like an ink blot. It's
Yes.
not just one singular habit that we rely on. But what's cool about the idea, interesting about the idea, is that it's universal. It's not like
Mhm.
unique to one particular unusual individual. It's we all are subject to these, and so they can be
Yes.
codified, they can be recognized, they
Mhm.
can be not diagnosed but observed, and then weigh into say a psychoanalyst
Mhm.
formulation of the person's problems that they need to solve. And trauma weighs heavily into this because I was thinking as you said that perhaps the flavor of denial is a little bit more about the true exterior world and what's going on
Mhm.
in it, whereas repression is more of a. I think of people who say, "I never get angry. I'm not
Yes.
an angry person." Isn't that repressing their anger? Or I'm not
Yes, it
scared
is.
of anything. I'm never scared of anything.
Yes.
Or I'm not an envious person, but
Mhm.
all humans are envious people in some
Right.
way, or at least jealous. They don't wish the death of others, but perhaps they wish to have the same possessions as others and deny that internally, which is to then eventually repress internally the negative, I guess, negative emotion. So when you say you could repress facing your own shadow, which gets us more into Jungian style thinking, meaning your dark side or your negative impulses. I always used to tell people that when they'd say, "Well, what exactly are emotions? Aren't some emotions just bad?
Mhm.
Prima facie bad. They're on their face, they're bad, like anger, for example." And I'm like, "No, no, no. They're no more they're no worse or bad than a traffic light. All they are signals. They're signals telling us something is right.
Yeah.
We're doing the right things. We're heading in the right direction. Or there's signals like a stoplight or a caution light, a yellow light telling us something's a little off about my life or about who I am being or how I am feeling and what I am doing. There's something off. There's signals. And so the pleasant ones tell us some information, just like a go signal or a green light. And the negative ones, like anger, envy, rage. Well, rage is a different animal, literally. Um,
Yeah.
or just concern, worry, things like that are also just signals. They're neither good nor bad. They provide data on how things are going. Preconscious,
Yes.
as Freud would say, preconscious or subconscious data. So I think it's useful to think then of what you said about the shadow. Repressing the shadow means, say you do have like dark impulses or severe envy or something like this, and you just pretend it doesn't exist. I'm not an envious person, or I'm not an angry person, and then you you know squelch it and just bury it, bag it then you don't have, it's not that you just have this buried thing and that's bad in and of itself. It's simply that you've eliminated that data that you could mine for, like a traffic signal, directing you to look at some areas of life and work on improving them, to steer your life in
Precisely.
the right way. Okay.
Precisely. I mean, so there's a lot to be said about bravely facing your defenses. The repression is a neurotic one, so it's not going to what it's going to do is it's going to get in the way of your authenticity with others. And someone who severely represses is going to be a lot flatter in dimension. They're going to be a flat character. And so if you want to be a well-developed character in your own story, you have to weed out your defenses. And that takes, let's be authentic here, talking about authenticity. That takes a careful selection of your audience, whether that's a therapist, whether that's close friends and family, because I'm not against that either. I think being authentic with your own family and friends is very adaptive. I don't think therapists should corner the market on emotional intimacy. I think sadly for some people, that's just their option since maybe they have very poor family structures or people who they can't be authentic with. But when you're looking at defenses, and determining what's going on. I mean, there's a few routes you can go. You can always look at how did this begin and what purpose did it serve? Repression is very useful short term. There are some defenses that aren't really ever helpful. So, and I'm sure you could find examples, but things like splitting, like having to see someone else as a villain. I mean, if you're in war and you're a good soldier and you can totally dehumanize someone, maybe that's for your own hide, right? Adaptive, but it's not really for your humanity. So, but with defenses like repression, like, okay, I can put off my feelings and not acknowledge them. Well, there's times not to, but then in order to understand what you want from a relationship and what you need to feel like a whole person, you are going to have to move beyond repression, or you're just going to burn out. We've got some really
Yeah.
good questions in chat. Geraldine asked if there was a medical condition called a nervous breakdown. I've been asked that a
Ah,
lot. I think there used to be. I don't think we can bill for that at all now. So I think that's a good
yeah.
question. It's not
I always say
billable.
no when
Yeah,
people
I
ask
say that too.
that question. I say no, that's not a thing. It
Used to be.
probably refers to any reason to be admitted to a psychiatric hospital,
Yeah, I think of like
whatever the reason
psychotic
is.
breaks. I think of
Psychotic
psychotic breaks.
break. Yeah, but people who get severely depressed or suicidal sometimes say that of themselves
What about
or
neurotic
family.
breaks? I think neurotic
Yeah,
breaks
a
are might
neurotic
be.
breakdown.
Yeah, I think that's when you face the end of how you can keep the status quo going. Like if you've repressed so much that you are in a terrible relationship or have awful family and you get hit with too much truth,
Ah,
then
okay.
there may be, suicidal ideation, homicidal ideation, I don't know, whatever, like a desire to reset and hit that reset button. And
It's like
then
a transition or a midlife crisis would be an
that's a good
example.
view too. Yeah, I think breakdown can be breakthrough to use an R.D. Lang quote, and of course he was a very controversial figure. He had some good ideas. I think we know now schizophrenia isn't just from uh, poor upbringing. I think that was a flight of fancy. I think that was that blank slate, non-genetic informed therapy model. But I do think the idea that you can have a breakdown in everything you knew to be true and come out of that for the better is absolutely like that can happen. And so I would
Yeah,
call like a neurotic break getting hit with reality too much and being dangerous to yourself in the short term and needing to like go inpatient. And hopefully people can avoid that because that can often be traumatizing too. But like
yeah,
again, repressing keeps the train going. But are you going the right direction on the train that you want to? Maybe you don't know because your wants are being repressed. And it's just, this is who I am. I'm doing this. I'm doing my job, or this is what it is to be in a relationship. And you don't see beyond. It's just a not seeing beyond. It's not really seeing reality to keep repress. It's not seeing your reality. So repression, like it really cuts down on your gratification. And it also lets you think of yourself as needing less than other people or being better in some cases. Like if you repress that you ever feel something negative toward other people, you'll just be numb. And numbness is not the same as joy. When people discover that, it's very
Yeah.
frightening if they've never really known joy. And it's been like, well, why isn't it good enough to just feel nothing? Well, you have to risk feeling anger in order to feel great joy, because being in touch with your emotions means you have to be in touch with all of them. That's something I learned in EMDR training, is like you can't selectively be dissociative or selectively be out of touch. You have to always be on guard against emotions if that's your defense, if you're dissociative from emotion.
Well, let's talk about selectivity and can I choose how I feel and how I behave? And let's talk about something you said ways back there before nervous breakdown. I think of a car breaking down. By the way, all it means,
Good.
very generic term. All it means is something's
Mhm.
broken, needs fixed, whether with a hospital or a med or therapy or something's not
Right.
working. But
Yeah.
I wanted to say, imagine Maslow's pyramid, right?
Yep.
Maslow's hierarchy of needs and all this, and at the very bottom there is survival needs, right?
Yeah,
So,
absolutely.
food, clothing, shelter, and then there's other stuff above that: social things, friendships, love, self actualizations, way up at the top. But down the
Yep.
bottom is the bottom layer is just survive. And then you're an expert on trauma, EMDR, and when you think, and I just saw a film last night on Netflix called Warfare. So it
Oh,
was
I've
yet
seen
another
that.
really gritty war movie. It was
Yeah, I
really
saw
good.
that.
So the mind of automatic behavior is
Yeah.
what goes on when there is actually survival at stake.
Yeah.
Well, now line that up against the triune brain model, Maslow's pyramid against the triune brain. At the very bottom of the triune brain is the most animalistic, not brain, but mind, which we call the reptilian brain. Unfortunately, it should be the reptilian mind.
Sure.
But it's pure instinct. It's reaction. It's lightning quick. It's
Mhm.
it's like reflex level, instinctual and reflex level. For
Right.
example, the fight or flight reflex. Mountain lion chasing you, you run, you don't think, your heart beats fast. You don't need
Right.
to think for your heart to beat fast. Wartime. So the reptilian brain equals survival level behavior,
Mhm.
which at its most extreme would be instinctual behavior, meaning automatic behavior, which by its very nature, definitively, is not conscious behavior. You don't
Right.
need to be conscious. It's automated,
Right.
automatic behavior. That's instincts. So we're in the world of Charles Darwin, and the most primitive forces keeping a species alive are survive long enough to hopefully reproduce. All
Right.
instinctual, all
Sure.
automatic. Well, line that up now as hierarchies with uh, the gradations of the ego defenses from primitive to immature to neurotic to mature, and you have a gradation of consciousness. And I don't
Yep.
mean that like Deepak Chopra or something or, woo woo type stuff. I mean, literally automatic and therefore
Yep.
not conscious, not pre thought out ahead of time,
Yeah.
not using wisdom of decisions intentionally or with patience, but just automatic.
Yeah.
And it's the source of kids and teenagers doing what has been called acting out. Acting out is what? It's the behavioral acting out, the behavioral response of automated impulses, or Freud would call them impulses or drives, instincts and reflexes. They're automatic. That's acting out. But we call it acting out and say it's a negative thing because it's where the rules of survivalist warfare style living are not appropriate for most of our ordinary lives.
Right.
Certainly not at all times, and rarely in this day and age. Is there truly a survival situation in this minute, moment, and hour? Rarely. And so when we use the instinctual related habits, denial, projection, repression, and we're starting to get slightly more mature, less immature, slightly more conscious, less
Yeah.
unconscious. As we gradate our way up through the ego defenses, we're moving from completely oblivious and unconscious to our own behaviors, like a 3-year-old might be
Yeah.
unconscious to why they want what they want and do what they do, all the way up to a very conscious, present minded, somebody full of mindfulness and using theory of mind, observing ego, intentional decision making, patience, and
Yeah.
starting to purposely we have to consciously employ the mature ego defenses to use them. They won't come online automatically just because
True.
they hope they would, or we're waiting for them to come along. So we can't wait for patience to come along. We can't wait for tolerance to come along. That's a good one for this past week. We can't wait for courage to come along. We can't wait for generosity to come along in us, to rise in us. We can't wait for it. We need to say, this is what is called for in this social scenario. And
Right.
whether I like it or not, I need to purposely do it as a
Yeah.
mature person because I want good things to result from this social scenario.
Yes.
And I don't care if it's one-on-one socializing or if it's a mass group of people relating to another group of people. Someone
Mhm.
needs to purposely, intentionally, and here you get the word intentional and
Yes.
intention. It
Love it.
implies awake, aware, conscious, and mindful, purposeful in deciding to do something, perhaps even if it is difficult to do, or
Yes.
uncomfortable to do, or costly personally to do. And
Yes.
that with that, we arrive at, I think, one of the antidotes to repression and
Mhm.
a lot of the immature ego defenses, which is the word courage.
Sure.
And we were talking earlier. I was telling you, I love the movie Saving Private Ryan for defining this because Tom Hanks looks at Matt Damon and says, "Earn this." You know, what I'm going to do for you. Earn this. Me saving you, me doing this act of courage to save you,
Yeah.
um, is earned, and it implies that you are consciously, purposely deciding to do simply what's right, whatever the personal cost, however uncomfortable it is emotionally, which
Yes.
means you're not suppressing your anxiety, you are acknowledging your anxiety and
Yes.
saying, "Doing this good thing is worth more than my anxiety."
Yeah.
And so I will hold my anxiety and tolerate my anxiety to do this good and noble thing that is called for. I even think of the movie The 300, believe it or not,
Oh, yeah.
because that's a good movie for also talking about courage in the idea of initiating into adulthood, which means initiating into mature, conscious, purposeful behaviors, mature
Yes.
ego defenses. When King Leonidas is a boy is thrown out into the wilderness to kill a wolf, and he is scared out of his mind. He's anxious. He feels the anxiety, but he has no choice but to do what is called for, which is to kill the wolf in order to survive,
Yes.
even though he's anxious. So
Precisely.
I like films like that as also as an example of how courage is purposeful and intentional, and it isn't avoiding anxiety. Oh, and I like one quote from that film: beyond just tolerating anxiety to do a noble thing, what
Mhm.
if anxiety, like in that film or all films about initiation, focuses our faculties?
Okay.
That's a positive use of anxiety. If it causes us to focus our faculties in harrowing circumstances, then
Mhm.
it isn't just a thing to tolerate, it's a thing to harness. It's like harnessing your dark side, like you were saying, your shadow, harnessing your avoidance of your own anxiety to instead use it to focus oneself on a solution, on a
Mm.
goal,
Yes.
right? Because
Oh,
King Leonidas, as a boy, they literally say he focused himself. He felt the snow under his toes and he felt the wind in his face. and it focused him, and he threw the spear at the wolf. And then again, as the king that he was meant to become, even though he was also going to die, to live out
Mhm.
his full potential of what his life was to be, once again, he's facing this fearful foe in the form of Xerxes, the Persian god king, and he felt the sand under his toes this time. He felt the wind in his face once again. His helmet was hot. He took it off. It
Mhm.
clanked to the ground, and he used his anxiety to focus as he threw the spear, and it drew blood from Xerxes, proving he's not a god. And that
Mhm.
was his destiny. And he used, instead of shying away from anxiety like the ogre that goes and hides in the 300,
Mhm.
he faces the anxiety directly first. He feels his sensations. He knows the anxiety is there. He also knows
Mhm.
he's gonna die. And that's
Mhm.
the ultimate anxiety. We're all gonna
Sure.
die someday.
Mhm.
When? Luckily not today. But if you use that fear of the unknown and fear of what you face, the ultimate fear being the fear of death itself. The whole point of initiation was you overcome the fear of death, actually, so that you could live the
Mhm.
fullest life you could. Then you fear nothing. You're not a fool, but you don't have to fear anything that isn't deadly. And he throws the spear. So that's my take on how courage is a thought out, thoughtful, patient, mature, conscious ego state and ego defense used to defeat anxiety and to cause good outcomes for individuals and groups, and is an antidote to repression. In fact, all therapy, you made me think of your patients as courageous. When you're talking about focus, drive, would you say drive right into it? Like drive the
Yes.
car
Yeah.
right into
Yeah. With the
the
you're right, you're right.
traumatic emotions? That's,
Yeah.
that's courageous for you and especially for the patient to drive headlong into their fears and their fearsome memories. That is courageous in
Well,
itself.
yeah, it's exciting. I appreciate that. I mean, there's a few things. So for one, I like clients to encounter this thought of, oh, could I have offended Jeremy by cursing or saying this? And for me to say, no, please continue what you're saying. Like, I'm not going to break if you use certain language. I'm not going to shy away or break therapeutic frame or be unable to handle your trauma. And so, part of why being a therapist is so delineated away from and separate from being a friend is your client needs to see how you respond to their darkness and how you don't rely on ego defenses or your own needs in that relationship. That's how it's different than a friendship. I would encourage people, don't try to be a full on therapist to all your friendships, and that burns people out because you need gratification as well. I have a very different relationship with people in my personal life than I do as a therapist. Now, obviously, if I know something to point them in the right direction or some principle to help, I'll throw that out and be helpful and not withhold that just because I'm not on the clock. But I think one of the key ways you help clients break through defenses is by discussing, like, okay, so you don't think people like you if they disappoint you at all. Right, well, how do we address that here in this room? What are your thoughts on how I view you, client? I mean, that's the object related question. That's a big analytic perspective, is to have the client kind of tell you how they think the therapist perceives them, or there's what other people could be thinking, feeling, kind of exploring other people's interiority and how the client construes that. There's a lot more to that as well. But so for splitting, like, what is it like to actually sit with this idea that someone could disappoint you and not be a villain, like not be terrible? Like, what is it like if someone even tells you no or rejects something, but they still either care or a valuable person in your life. And so that's how you that's the courage there is to sit with someone in your
Yeah.
life and be aware that, I mean, and also with repression, I like to tell clients, so what is it like? What if you sat in here and got really angry and explored that with me and just said, bleep all of this stuff I'm dealing with, and I'm tired of having to be nice about it. Like I want clients to be able to say stuff that they don't want to say, they don't, excuse me, that they don't feel comfortable saying in their life because it's curative to embrace your humanity. And I think where Christians can go wrong, I mean, there's a verse that said in Ephesians that says, "Be angry and sin not." It says, um, to actual. I mean, that's telling you to recognize your anger. And I've talked with clients
Doesn't mean
before
you
and
have to
said,
act on it.
"Yeah, it doesn't
You
mean you
don't
have to
have to
act
act on it.
poorly. You can
Yeah.
set
Yeah.
boundaries. Like in your anger, do not sin." That's a great quote from that's the NIV translation. But I'm thinking of that because I've had clients say, "Well, I don't want to experience anger. I don't want to do anything with it." And I've said, "Well, you can do things with that. You can say, when you're feeling anxious, you can say, okay, I'm noticing that I'm excited. Like I'm going to notice that this excitement, I'm going to direct that energy somewhere." So it's interesting you bring that up too, because I think we have to acknowledge it. We are human. It's not going to work to try to beat repression with more repression and say, well, I just don't ever want to feel that. I want to feel perfectly happy immediately when
I
someone
want
can,
to project. I mean, that's a big one.
yeah,
I mean,
yeah,
what you're
please.
making me think of, it's always courageous for a patient, a client, to directly look at not only their faults, which we all
Yeah,
have, that's easy, but to dare to look at what they're missing out on by not being proud of their good aspects and not using
yeah.
them,
Well,
hiding
people
their light
should.
under a bushel, so to speak,
Yeah, people
as
do
has been
that.
said.
They take a very perverted view of the gospel or of the Bible because people's defenses interpret how they read things. And so you get people who think they should be very small and shrink themselves as they don't deserve to feel good and they also don't deserve to feel angry. And it's very, very corrosive and it eats away at people on the inside. And they want to rope the therapist in to help them in that quest to not feel angry or not feel something negative. And I have to break it to them and kind of burst that bubble that actually we just have to learn to navigate emotions and like you said, use them as guideposts. Sometimes anger is saying, I need a boundary. You need to set a boundary to protect yourself. And that's valid. Now, does it always mean you act on it? Does it always mean there's even a boundary needed? No. Sometimes we can be angry because something reminds us of how we used to be treated and we're getting on guard too early, like a very sensitive smoke detector. But it can mean that we need to do something. And I think you hit it very well. Like it is okay to be content and to be proud of things of yourself, and if you're spiritual and religious, to say that is of God. Like I can be proud of the gifts that I have. Doesn't mean I'm arrogant, but I have to believe that I'm worthwhile to treat others that way too. It doesn't mean narcissism. Far
Yeah.
from it. It doesn't because
Well, yeah, there's
it's
a
healthy.
healthy pride and unhealthy pride, healthy narcissism and
Absolutely.
unhealthy healthy pride and unhealthy
Yeah.
narcissism. There's a book by
Absolutely.
test pilot Chuck Yeager, from way back in the like 50s. Chuck Yeager, in his book, he said, "It ain't bragging if you can do the thing."
Hmm. Right. Right. Yeah.
That's, I mean, it's a pretty good quotable quote. You almost make me think though that courage might be one of the master, um, mature character virtues and mature ego defenses, because you could be angry and have that be an act of courage because you were previously suppressing or repressing the anger, and now you're
Right.
daring to let it get expressed because it's just for, and it's human for you to do so. So courage, a lot of the time, this is worth saying before we wrap up, that courage is an antidote to many of these primitive and immature ego defenses, including repression, the mastery,
Yes.
avoidance of anxiety.
Yes.
Is worth saying that courage is not the same as bravery.
Mm.
Bravery is doing bravery is facing something that is dangerous.
Okay.
There is danger. Courage is not necessarily used. In fact, it's best used not on that which is deadly.
Okay.
It could be part of bravery if you were using bravery to face a deadly threat. And furthermore, if you save lives in the process or you help people in a deadly scenario like war,
Yeah.
then you're a hero. So heroism and bravery are not the same as courage,
Right.
but courage is also not the same as what you could call foolhardiness. That's like going into
Hmm.
danger unprepared
Right.
and just being bold and
Right.
unprepared. That's foolhardy. So don't be foolhardy.
Yep.
Don't be brave if you are not equipped to do so.
Right.
Don't be a hero if you're not equipped to do so. But if you are a human, any of us can do courage. That's the positive, awesome message here. Anybody with a mouth to speak words, it could be only words, it could be only discussion. Big
Yes.
theme recently this week. It doesn't have to be a physical act, that's bravery.
Yep.
All it is the decision to do or say or think the right thing, no matter how bad it feels to do so, or no
Yep.
matter how daunting the circumstances or how much you have to sacrifice.
Mm.
It's doing, thinking, deciding the right thing, no matter what else is in the picture.
Yeah.
And that means any of us have access to courage. You don't have to be a firefighter or a member of the military. You don't have to be a politician or public speaker or a muscular weightlifting person. It's not about
Hmm.
physicality. My little uh, 5'0" grandmother, I would say, was a courageous person.
Oh yeah.
So it's not about muscularity, size, physicality, even. It's just do the right thing, do what is right.
Yes.
And how do we know what to do? It's right. Well, that's a whole other discussion, I would imagine. But it has something to do with power in numbers. It has something to do
Yes.
with the reasonable man concept, reasonable person concept, what most reasonable people would think is right.
Yeah.
Um, I think the philosophers are good at this, and actually, the philosophers behind the founding of Western culture and our
Mm.
country knew a lot. They studied a lot about what is a good person and what is the right thing to do. So there.
Yes. Yeah. I think it takes courage for therapists to learn EMDR therapy and use it. And I know when I help to train them, we encourage them and say, like, be brave and introduce this to your clients. Introduce to them this concept of exposure therapy and desensitization. They're very interchangeable because you become desensitized through exposure. And it's a sea change, it's a paradigm shift because before, many clients were exposed to the idea that when you feel upset, give yourself care, indulge in some way, try to shift your attention, and that's distraction, right? And that can be useful in the short term, but to really clean out the emotional pain requires exposure. And so for therapists who are new in the field or who've spent years basically doing the band-aid therapy or not to be rude, there's some really amazing talk therapy. It doesn't all have to be EMDR. But if therapists have a predisposition to avoid making their clients cry through facing the past, even though the clients keep living with the flashbacks, they have to gird themselves and develop their courage to help clients move into a therapy that has short-term emotional pain, but long-term emotional gain.
It's what I've heard a lot of patients tell me that when they've had various therapists, it's almost like dating or finding a good relationship. You know, you got to go through a
Yes.
lot of them to find the right
Yes.
chemistry and personality fit. But a lot of them will say, I really wish my therapist would do certain things, which I infer to mean almost always push me. And that doesn't mean push me off a cliff or push me in the wrong direction. It means push me toward what I know I should be doing and is right to do. but that I just
Yes.
can't get myself to do. And we call that being an active therapist instead of a passive therapist. And you're an active, well, you're everything as a therapist, but
That's right.
if nothing else, you are an active therapist, meaning you push people, and I do this too, although I don't
Yes.
technically do therapy as my main thing. Um, you push people to do the right thing, which is doing what? It's encouragement. If you look to the
Yes.
root of the word,
Yes.
encouragement is courage. You're in imbuing courage, rising the courage already naturally in the person to bring it out, which is
Mhm.
to do the right thing, which is to use maybe the master mature ego defense is courage. I don't know.
I like it.
I'll
Well, it's called
speculate.
well, insight-oriented psychotherapy, like psychoanalysis, requires you to face the darkness, and so if you do that and you come and you do that and develop that insight and you stick with it and you don't look away, that's also developing courage. So I think you've nailed
Yes,
I think courage is the variable there. And I like what Geraldine said, the own our darkness as fiercely as we embody our light. She wanted to know what we thought of that. I think that's right. I think we can recognize darkness and then clear that out and convert that energy into something for good. That's my view. Shadow work, whatever you want to
yes,
call that, reclaiming that energy from repression. It's like you only have so much space in a hard drive. You want to clean out the stuff. You have to see what's there to know how to clean that out and convert it to something else.
absolutely. Well, good. Good talk, timely talk, perhaps,
Yes,
about the
absolutely.
courage to, uh, debate, discuss with people, some of whom you may disagree with. That's courage, on either
Agreed.
side, either person involved in such a
Right.
talk. So thank you once again. I always learn something every single time. So what do I
Ditto.
owe you?
Oh, it's even. It's equal. I learn a lot too, and I love going into the classics of psychoanalysis. I think there's a lot to be learned there. Freud had some,
Yeah.
and his daughter had some good ideas. Many great analysts. So it's amazing. Yes, love it.
All right. We'll
I
do it again
appreciate
soon,
it.
you guys. Off to the
Yes.
movies for me. Check out some
Oh
movies
yeah.
so I can get caught up with Jeremy here.
Oh well. Listen, there's
Okay.
so much to talk about there from that from Long Walk, and we'll get to it. Love
Stephen
it.
King. All right. You got it. Thanks, Jeremy.
Thank you.
Bye.